Let's look at something pretty simple here. Let's look at how we can pass parameters from the hosting web page to an actual Silverlight application at the time when we instantiate it. So just like we have in various other videos here, I've got a blank solution. I have my Silverlight project, I have my website which is hosting that Silverlight project. And so far I've done nothing with these applications. So let's go to the Silverlight application. Let's go to the main XAML page. And I'm just going to put onto this grid, let's have a couple of columns in this grid. So we'll just say column definitions, and we'll add a column definition and another column definition. And into those two columns what we'll do is just put some list boxes. So I'll have a list box, I'll say xName equals list of keys, grid.column equals 0, which would be the default anyway. Let's give it a margin of 10 just to space that out a little bit. And we'll have another list box over here which will be list of values. And we'll put this into column 1 and give it a margin again so we can see that we're starting to create that UI over there. And in both cases what I'm going to do is just data bind these list box items. So I'm going to say here that the items that we have in here come from being data bound. So we'll bind that one and we'll also bind this one. If you've not looked at data binding yet, we have a video as how you can bind a list box using data binding. So what's this got to do with initialization parameters coming into the application? Well, if we go and take a look at the code that lives behind our app.xaml, so this is a class that represents our application. So here it is, app. And in the startup event here, what we get is a startup event args. And if we have a look at that, we'll find that there's a property on there called initparams, and it's an iDictionary of string to string. These are the initialization parameters for this application. So what I'm going to do is add a property to my class. Let's just add a property. We'll have it as an iDictionary of string to string, and we'll call this initparams. And all we'll do is at the point where we get this startup event, we will set this .initparams to be equal to e.initparams. So we're basically just making this available so we can use it from anywhere else in the application. I'll then pop to the code that lives behind our XAML file for our UI, and let's handle the loaded event in here. So we'll say loaded plus equals onloaded. And in here we can then get back to those initialization parameters. So we can say, let's say app, my app equals application.current as app, because of course our application current is actually an app, it's not just an application. And then we can walk up to that and get hold of those initparams. So what I'm going to do is use those for data binding. So we'll say that what we want to get here is, we'll say that list keys dot data context equals, and we'll reach into my app dot initparams and we'll pull out the keys of that dictionary. What we'll then do is we'll say that list values dot data context equals my app dot initparams dot values of this thing. So we're just reaching in and pulling out the keys and the values and using them as a data context on those two particular list boxes that we got back on our UI here. So how do we actually pass this stuff through to the Silverlight application? Well, if we go and look at the hosting page, in our case I'll go and look at the ASPX page that instantiates the Silverlight application. What we've got, of course, is the ASPX control to instantiate Silverlight. And one of the things that we can set on this thing is a parameter called init parameters. So we'll set here, let's say key 1 equals value 1, key 2 equals value 2. Notice these are key equals value and they're comma separated. Let's say key 3 equals value 3. That's probably enough for you to get the idea. So we're creating 3 keys and 3 values here. Let's go and see if we save this and press F5. Let's let debugging kick in. Let's let the web server spin up. And hopefully what we'll see is that those parameters have been passed through into the application from the hosting page. And in this case we've just used them for data binding, but we could use them for anything. And so it's a really nice way to make your application parameterizable by the person who actually instantiates it on a page. So this init parameters is a very useful thing to know about, being able to pass through this stuff into an application at runtime so that you get some parameterization between you as the application author and the person who has to author the page that you actually live on in the end.